curious minds. Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we really try to unpack complex topics and pull out those key bits of knowledge you need.
That's the goal.
And today, we're plunging into something that, well, it literally touches your fingertips every single day.
Yeah.
The security and privacy of your mobile messaging apps.
Mm.
We're talking everything from, those casual chats with friends all the way up to potentially very sensitive work communications.
It's definitely a landscape far more intricate than it looks on the surface. Lots of hidden mechanisms, maybe some surprising realities under there.
Yeah.
Our aim today, I think, is to go beyond just the marketing claims, to really understand how the big players like Huawei, Samsung, Apple, and the Android system underneath it all, how they actually safeguard your data.
And what's fascinating, like you said, is how the tech intertwines with company policies, even global politics.
Exactly. That interplay is key.
Because you might just tap send and sort of assume your message is, I don't know, magically private. But there are just so many layers beneath that simple action.
There really are.
We've looked at some really detailed sources for this. They lay out the technical nitty-gritty, the strategies these tech giants are using, and yeah, even those geopolitical pressures that come into play.
So our mission for you, the listener, is to cut through some of that noise.
Yeah, cut through the jargon, reveal what's truly secure in your pocket, and maybe what isn't quite as secure as you thought.
Let's get into it.
Okay, so before we even get to the messaging apps themselves, we kind of have to talk about the foundation they all sit on, especially if you're an Android user, right?
Absolutely. We need to start with the Android operating system's own multi-layered security design.
Lay it on us. What does that look like?
Well, think of the Android OS like a fortress, a really well-designed fortress with many defensive walls, each one protecting a different part of your data.
Okay.
So at the very core, you've got data at rest encryption. Now, this has actually evolved quite a bit. It used to be full disk encryption, FDE.
Right, I remember that.
But it moved to file-based encryption, or FBE. That came in with Android 7.0.
And why the change? What did FBE do differently?
FBE was a really strategic leap, actually, because it allows for something called direct boot.
Direct boot.
Yeah, it means that even before you fully unlocked your phone, say after a restart, essential things like your alarm clock can still ring.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. Practical.
Very practical. It cleverly separates your credential encrypted data, that's the really sensitive stuff, only accessible after you log in from device encrypted data, which has some limited access before login.
So it's balancing security with actually being able to use your phone.
Exactly. Finding that crucial balance. And then Android 9 took it another step, adding metadata encryption.
Metadata encryption. So not just the files, but information about the files.
Precisely. Things like directory structures, file sizes.
Yeah.
Basically, details about the data, not just the data itself.
That might seem like a really minor technical detail, but that feels like a pretty profound shift, doesn't it?
It absolutely is, because it acknowledges that even let's say, the shape of your communication, who you talk to, when, how often, the size of files you send, that can paint an incredibly revealing picture.
Yeah, even if the words themselves are scrambled.
Right. Even if the content is encrypted. It's a surprising reminder for many, I think, that privacy isn't just about message content. It's about the context, too.
Okay, so Android has these software safeguards, encryption, metadata protection, but how much of this relies on the actual physical phone, the hardware?
Now you're getting to the hardware support.
Yeah.
And that's the unshakable foundation of this digital castle, if you will.
The bedrock.
The bedrock. Android relies heavily on specialized hardware components, things like Keymaster, or now Keymint, and the Trusted Execution Environment, the T.
Okay, T, I've heard of that. What is it exactly?
Think of them like super secure isolated vaults built right into your phone's main chip. Physically separate, in a way.
Right.
And that's where your most critical encryption keys are stored, which makes them incredibly difficult to extract, even if the main Android operating system, gets compromised somehow.
So even if someone hacks the software, they can't easily get the keys out of this hardware vault.
That's the idea. It makes it exponentially harder. And this hardware security also ties directly into verified boot.
Verified boot.
Yeah, it's a process that ensures all the code running on your Android device, right from the moment you power it on, comes from a trusted source. It creates this sort of unbroken chain of trust, starting from the hardware itself, up through the operating system, all the way to the applications.
Like checking IDs at every step.
Kind of, yeah. And it even includes something called rollback protection.
Which means?
It prevents your device from being tricked into booting up an older, potentially vulnerable version of the software. It's a key defense against certain sophisticated attacks, called downgrading attacks.
That's fascinating. So the hardware gives you this incredible layer of trust. But okay, what happens once we actually install an app? How does the OS stop, say, one dodgy app from messing everything up?
Good question. That's where the application security model comes in. Think of it like giving every single app its own little isolated mini computer on your
A
phone.
sandbox.
Exactly, its own sandbox. And each sandbox gets a unique user ID or UID. This strictly limits what each app can see and access. It can't just wander around your phone's data.
Okay.
Then on top of that, you have Linux. That stands for Security Enhanced Linux. It's a mandatory access control system.
Mandatory access control sounds strict.
It is. It acts like a really strict bouncer at the door, further restricting what apps can do, even if an app somehow manages to gain elevated permissions like root access.
So multiple layers of containment.
Multiple layers. And of course, there's the Android permission model, the thing users interact with most directly.
Right, the pop-ups asking for access to your camera, microphone, location.
Exactly. And that model aims to put you, the user, more in control, giving you those fine-grained choices like only allow while using the app.
Okay, so with all those technical layers, the encryption, the hardware vaults, the sandboxes, the permissions, how much does the user's actual behavior, how they manage those permissions, truly impact the overall security effectiveness? Or is it mostly about the underlying tech doing its job?
That's a really crucial point. While the technical safeguards are, quite robust, the user's role is absolutely critical.
It still matters what buttons you press.
It really does. Our sources definitely highlight that you, the user, have a significant responsibility in how effective these protections actually are in practice.
Yeah.
Even the best castle needs its inhabitants to actually close the gates properly.
Right. Okay, so Android sounds like it has these, well, pretty amazing security layers built in, but it also faces this notorious challenge: fragmentation.
Fragmentation, yes.
It's like having that super strong castle, but then the contractors installing the security gates are all on completely different schedules, and some never show up.
That's an excellent analogy, actually. Android's open source nature, which is a strength in many ways, also means that many different manufacturers, Samsung, Xiaomi, Oppo, countless others, they all have their own update strategies.
And they're on timelines.
Exactly. Which leads to significant delays and real inconsistency across the whole ecosystem. We're talking about security updates that might arrive monthly for some phones.
If you're lucky.
If you're lucky, yeah. Or maybe quarterly, or even just biannually. And sometimes those updates get delayed for up to 300 days by the carriers or the device manufacturers themselves, the OEMs.
300 days.
Yeah.
Wow. That fragmentation sounds like a massive security risk waiting to happen. How staggering is the actual real-world impact? How many devices are we talking about?
It's truly eye-opening when you see the numbers. Our sources estimate that as of around 2020, over 1 billion Android devices were no longer receiving security patches.
1 billion. With a B.
1 billion. Just out there. Perpetually exposed to known vulnerabilities that have long since been fixed in newer software versions.
That's terrifying.
It is. And what's particularly concerning is how efficiently attackers can exploit these weaknesses. About 89% of Android vulnerabilities, according to the research, can be exploited without any user interaction at all.
So you don't even have to click anything.
No click needed. And a significant chunk, about 27%, can even be exploited remotely over the network. This just creates this vast, persistent long tail of risk. Older Android devices become potentially very easy targets.
Okay, so Google must be aware of this massive problem. What have they done to try and fix it, or at least mitigate it?
They have taken a very strategic and I think important step. It's called Project Mainline. It was introduced back in Android 10.
Project Mainline, what does it do?
Essentially, it modularizes key parts of the Android system. Think of it like breaking down the big OS update into the smaller, critical pieces.
Like security components.
Exactly. Critical security and system components. So instead of waiting for a full operating system update from your manufacturer or your carrier, which can take months
Or never arrive.
Google can now update these crucial modules directly through the Google Play Store infrastructure, just like updating an app.
Bypassing the middlemen.
Precisely.
Right.
Bypassing those lengthy OEM and carrier update cycles. It's a really significant shift, an attempt to regain some control and ensure that essential bug fixes and security improvements reach devices much faster and more seamlessly.
That sounds like a genuinely smart move. Okay, so we've talked about the operating system, the foundation. Now let's pivot to the actual messaging apps we use every single day. Everyone talks about end-to-end encryption, right? E2EE.
E2EE. the buzzword.
But what does that really mean in practice? And how do the big players, Apple, Samsung, Huawei, how do they stack up?
Well, the common goal across the industry, at least nominally, is this push towards E2E, which theoretically means only the sender and the intended receiver can actually read the message, not even the company providing the service.
Theoretically.
Theoretically. But the implementation details, and crucially, the transparency around that implementation, differ wildly between services.
Okay, let's break it down. Let's start with Apple's iMessage, often seen as a kind of benchmark, right?
iMessage definitely offers strong default E2EE. That default part is important. It means Apple itself genuinely can't read your blue bubble messages while they're in transit.
Okay.
But what's truly fascinating, and really a groundbreaking step for them, is their new PQ3 protocol. They introduced that in February 2024.
PQ3, what's special about that?
This isn't just, a minor update. It's a deep dive into post-quantum cryptography, or PQC.
Post-quantum, like protection against quantum computers breaking encryption in the future.
Exactly that. It's designed specifically to protect against future, hypothetical, but potentially very real quantum computers that could theoretically break today's standard encryption algorithms.
Wow, okay. How does it work?
It uses a clever kind of hybrid encryption design. It combines the traditional cryptography they were already using, elliptic curve crypto, with new post-quantum algorithms. One specific one is called Crystal's Kyber.
So like belt and braces?
Belt and braces is a good way to put it. Think of it like building a bridge with two different kinds of steel, one that's super strong today and another designed to withstand a future, quantum-powered earthquake, metaphorically speaking.
Got it.
And they've apparently put it through rigorous formal verification, trying to mathematically prove its security. However, there's a critical nuance, a big one.
Which is?
If you message someone who isn't on an iOS device, the green bubbles.
Oh, the green bubbles.
It silently reverts to completely unencrypted SMS or MMS messages, just plain old text messages.
Which is not secure at all.
Not secure at all. And it's a potential privacy trap that many, many users just aren't aware of. They see messages and assume it's all the same.
Okay, good point. What about Samsung messages? That's hugely popular on Android devices.
Right. Samsung Messages' approach to E2EE primarily relies on Google Messages' RCS implementation. RCS stands for Rich Communication Services.
The sort of upgrade to SMS.
Exactly. And Google's RCS encryption, in turn, is built on the highly respected Signal protocol.
The same one Signal uses.
The very same, which is generally seen as very strong. But here's the catch. E2EE in Google Messages, and therefore in Samsung Messages using it, is conditional.
Conditional how?
It only actually works if everyone in that specific chat is using Google Messages and has the RCS chat features turned on.
So if even one person is using regular SMS or a different app,
then the whole chat is not end-to-end encrypted. For those non-E2E RCS chats, it uses something called Transport Layer Security, or TLS.
TLS, like HTTPS for website.
Pretty much. It protects the messages while they're in transit to Google servers, but once they get there, Google can technically access the content. It's not end-to-end.
Okay, so conditional E2EE. But Samsung has something extra, right? Message Guard.
Yes, Message Guard. This is actually a really interesting and proactive defense from Samsung. It specifically targets zero-click vulnerabilities.
Zero click. Those sound scary. The ones where you don't have to do anything.
Exactly. Those terrifying attacks where your device can get infected without you ever tapping a suspicious link or opening malicious file. They often come in through things like images or other media files.
How does Message Guard stop them?
It works by basically creating a separate, safe sandbox just for incoming image files and similar media. It inspects them in this isolated environment before they ever reach the main part of your phone or the messaging app.
So it checks for bombs before letting the package in the house.
That's a great way to think about it. It tries to neutralize potential malware before it can infect your device. It really shows Samsung is thinking about these advanced, often invisible threats.
Okay, interesting. So given Apple's PQ3 push and Samsung's reliance on Google RCS plus Message Guard, how does Huawei's MeTime stack up?
Well, Huawei claims that MeTime uses E2E for everything. Messages, calls, even screen sharing. That's the official line.
There's a but.
There's a significant but. The critical point for MeTime is the profound lack of public, detailed technical specifications, or any independent security audit reports for its E2E protocol.
So we don't actually know how it works under the hood.
We don't. Not in any verifiable way. This kind of black box approach creates, frankly, significant trust issues,
Right.
especially when you consider the whole geopolitical environment surrounding Huawei.
Right.
Without that transparency, external security analysts simply cannot independently verify how robust or even how genuine its E2E implementation really is. And that verification is fundamental for building trust in any security system.
Lack of transparency is a red flag in security.
A major one.
Okay. And then, just for context, you mentioned Signal earlier, often called the gold standard. Why is that?
Signal is indeed widely considered the gold standard, primarily because of its open source Signal protocol. It provides default E2EE for absolutely all communications, messages, calls, everything.
Default and open source.
Exactly. That transparency, the fact that anyone can examine the code, allows for widespread peer review and independent verification that builds a really high level of trust that, frankly, few other apps can match.
Okay, that makes sense. So E2E, when it's properly implemented and on by default, protects the content of your messages, the actual words you type.
Correct.
But there's a lot more to digital communication than just the words, isn't there? What about all the stuff around the message, the who, when, and where, the context?
Ah, yes. This brings us to metadata collection, and it's a crucial, often completely overlooked aspect of digital privacy.
Metadata, so data about the data.
Precisely. And what's often surprising to people is that all the major platforms we're discussing, Apple, Google via Messages, and Huawei, they all collect some form of metadata.
All of them, even Apple.
Yes. This includes things like message, send and receive times, the IP addresses of the devices involved, read statuses, sometimes phone numbers associated with the accounts.
And that stuff is not covered by the end-to-end encryption.
Generally, no. Metadata is typically not protected by E2EE. And this is significant because metadata has frequently been used by law enforcement agencies in investigations.
How so?
Well, even if they can't read your messages, knowing who you talk to, when you talk to them, how often, and from what general location, based on IP address, can reveal incredibly sensitive communication patterns. It can map out social networks, identify associates.
Wow. Yeah, that alone tells a story.
It really does. For example, one of the sources highlighted that Huawei's MeTime apparently uploads users' contact phone numbers to Huawei servers every 7 days. They call it a capability check.
A capability check.
Yeah, presumably to see which of your contacts also use MeTime. But even if those numbers are hashed, which is a form of scrambling,
It still creates a record.
it still creates what the source called a persistent record of a user's social graph, right there on Huawei servers. Think about the implications of having a detailed map of everyone you communicate with stored by the service provider.
Yeah, that's concerning. And Apple.
iMessage also collects metadata, things like send-receive times, IP addresses. It's standard practice for routing and service operation, but it's still data collection.
And Signal. Does it do better here?
Signal is notably different. It offers a feature called sealed sender. The goal there is specifically to hide metadata, like who is sending a message to who, from Signal's own servers.
So it tries to protect the who as well as the what.
Exactly. It provides a really powerful, almost unique layer of metadata protection compared to the others.
Okay, metadata is one thing, but then there's the really big question of cloud backups. iCloud, Google Drive, if your messages are supposedly E2EE while sending, what happens when they get backed up to the cloud? That seems like a major potential weak link.
It absolutely is a crucial distinction, and it's often where that E2E chain can, let's say, break or become complicated.
So how does Apple handle iMessage backups to iCloud?
Okay, for Apple iMessage, the default setting is that Apple retains a copy of the encryption keys needed to decrypt your iCloud backups.
Wait, Apple keeps the keys so they can read your backed up messages?
By default, yes. If they receive a valid legal request, they can decrypt that iCloud backup data. This is a really significant point for user privacy, and many people aren't aware of it.
Is there a way around that?
Yes. Apple introduced Advanced Data Protection, or ADP. If you choose to turn ADP on, it shifts the key management entirely to you. Apple no longer holds the keys to most of your iCloud data, including backups.
So they can't decrypt it then?
Correct. But the trade-off is data recovery becomes your sole responsibility. If you lose your device and your recovery keys, Apple can't help you get that data back.
Convenience versus maximum security.
That's the classic trade-off. Now, Samsung Cloud offers something similar called Enhanced Data Protection for its backups. It provides E2E, where you manage a long 28-character recovery code. So, again, Samsung doesn't retain the keys.
Okay, similar to Apple's ADP, what about Huawei?
For Huawei MeTime and Huawei Cloud Backups, the source material we reviewed didn't explicitly state the default cloud backup encryption details, or crucially, whether Huawei retains the keys.
So it's unclear.
It's unclear from the public information. Huawei Cloud claims multi-layer encryption, but that lack of specific detail about key management for backups is, again, a significant concern regarding transparency.
So the key to all of this security, literally, is how these encryption keys are managed. Who holds them? Can they be verified?
Precisely. Key management is absolutely paramount to the whole security posture. You mentioned iMessage historically. Its public keys, which are used to initiate encrypted chats, were stored on Apple's central identity service.
Which sounds like a single point of failure, potentially.
It was highlighted by researchers as a theoretical vulnerability, yes. A sophisticated attacker, or maybe even Apple under legal pressure, could potentially tamper with those keys. But Apple has recently introduced contact key verification, or CKV.
CKB, what does that do?
It allows you, the user, to manually compare a code with your contact or automatically verify their keys.
Yeah.
And importantly, you get alerts if a contact's key changes unexpectedly after you've verified it.
Ah, so it helps detect if someone's trying to impersonate your contact, a man-in-the-middle attack.
Exactly. It's a powerful step towards mitigating those kinds of sophisticated attacks by putting some verification power in the user's hands.
And Huawei's key management.
It also appears to be centralized, based on what we know. But crucially, it seems to lack those user-driven verification mechanisms like CKV. So it raises similar theoretical concerns about centralization, but without the same level of transparency or user control that Apple is now offering.
This is really where the purely technical stuff starts to bleed into, well, bigger global forces, isn't it?
Yeah.
You might not think about geopolitics when you send a quick text, but it sounds like it's a huge part of the underlying trust model for these services.
Indeed it is. User trust isn't just about the clever cryptography. It's profoundly influenced by the company's transparency, its policies, and critically, its legal ability or obligation to resist potential coercion from governments.
Okay, let's talk directly about Huawei then, and the impact of China's cybersecurity law. This has obviously been a major point of discussion and concern globally.
Right. Huawei, as a company headquartered and operating extensively in China, must comply with China's cybersecurity law, the CSL. There's no ambiguity there.
And what does that law require?
Among other things, it mandates real name registration for many network services. And, crucially, it requires network operators to cooperate with public security organs and provide technical support and assistance, including information, upon request.
Provide information. Does that include things like source code, encryption keys?
The law is broad, and interpretation suggests it can include demands for source code, encryption information, and user data. This creates what our sources accurately call a fundamental contradiction between Huawei's stated global privacy commitments and its undeniable legal obligations within China.
So even if they say they wouldn't put in backdoors?
Right. Despite Huawei's consistent and strong denials of ever building backdoors, this legal framework, combined with various historical allegations and security concerns raised by different governments, creates a significant trust deficit, particularly for users outside China or anyone handling sensitive political or commercial information.
What about that UK testing center they have? Doesn't that help?
They do operate the Huawei Cybersecurity Evaluation Center, HCSEC, in the UK. It allows UK officials to conduct some checks on equipment used in UK networks. But it mainly focuses on network gear, and, importantly, there's still a lack of public, detailed, independent audits for its consumer services, like MeTime, covering the E2EE and data handling aspects we've discussed. That transparency gap remains a barrier to building broader trust.
Okay. What about Apple? How do they handle government data requests? What's their stated position?
Apple's public policy is quite clear. They state they comply with valid legal requests for customer data search warrants, subpoenas, etc. But they also emphasize that they review these requests carefully and will challenge any they deem inappropriate, unlawful, or overly broad.
Do they provide numbers on this?
Yes, they publish detailed transparency reports every 6 months, showing the number and type of requests they receive from governments worldwide.
And backdoors. Master keys.
Apple explicitly states, very firmly, that they have never created backdoors or master keys for any product or service and have never allowed any government direct access to their servers. They are quite adamant on that point.
But the iCloud backup keys.
But, as we discussed, for standard iCloud backups, the ones without advanced data protection turned on Apple, does retain the encryption key copies. Which means if served with a valid warrant for that specific data, they do have the technical capability to decrypt and provide it.
So no backdoor, but they hold a key by default.
Exactly. It highlights that really crucial trade-off again. The convenience of easy data recovery versus achieving maximum possible privacy. And it shows how the choices companies make in designing these systems directly influence the trust model you, as a user, have to operate within.
This brings up a really critical point about the different rules of the road these global companies operate under. What stands out to you about how these very different companies, Apple, Samsung, Google, Huawei, navigate these incredibly complex legal and geopolitical landscapes?
I think what's truly striking is that fundamental tension. The tension between a company's global ambitions and user base, its unavoidable legal obligations in its home country, wherever that may be, and its users' universal expectations of privacy and security.
And transparency seems key.
Transparency, or often the lack thereof, becomes the ultimate arbiter of trust, especially when these significant geopolitical pressures are visibly in play. It's hard to trust what you can't verify.
Absolutely. Okay, looking ahead now, the world of digital security, it's obviously not standing still. As the threats evolve, the defenses have to evolve too. What are we seeing on the horizon? What's coming next?
We're certainly facing increasingly sophisticated threats, no doubt about it. Think about AI-driven cyber attacks. Attacks that can learn, adapt, and potentially be much more efficient and harder to detect than current methods.
AI fighting AI.
Potentially. We're also seeing frighteningly realistic deepfake scams used for social engineering or fraud. And remember that projection about zero-click malware, expected to potentially double by 2025.
Wow. And that statistic you mentioned earlier still haunts me. 89% of Android vulnerabilities exploitable without user interaction.
Exactly. It highlights the pervasive, often invisible nature of these modern threats. You might not even know you're being targeted.
Okay, that's the scary stuff. What are the good guys doing? What are the defenses being developed?
Thankfully, there are significant innovations happening on the defense side, too. We already talked about post-quantum cryptography, PQC.
Right, Apple's PQ3.
Apple's PQ3 is a prime example, integrating algorithms like Kyber, specifically designed to resist future quantum computers. Google is also very actively researching and adopting PQC in various products, like Chrome. This is becoming a real focus area.
What else?
We're also seeing AI-driven threat detection being used more effectively. Services like Google Play Protect, for instance, use machine learning to analyze app behavior patterns across billions of devices to predict and prevent attacks, sometimes even before a vulnerability is widely known.
Using AI to spot the bad guys.
In essence, yes. And even the operating systems themselves are getting more privacy-focused features built in. Android 15, for example, is expected to introduce things like AI-driven anti-theft features.
Like what?
Like a theft detection lock that uses sensors and AI to figure out if your phone might have been snatched and locks it down automatically. And also a dedicated private space on your phone for hiding and securing particularly sensitive apps and data.
Interesting. So it really is an ongoing high-stakes arms race.
Constantly evolving.
Yes. Wow, what a deep dive this has been. It's really clear that mobile messaging security is just far more nuanced, more complex, and frankly, more fascinating than most of us probably realize day to day. From those really fundamental layers of the Android OS, the hardware security, all the way up to the cutting-edge, quantum-resistant encryption like iMessage's PQ3, and then throwing in the unique challenges faced by companies like Huawei due to those geopolitical factors. It's a world of constant innovation, but also constantly shifting trust.
Absolutely. And if we try to connect this all back to the bigger picture, it really underscores, I think, that user trust in any messaging service isn't just about the tech specs. It's this complex interaction.
An interaction between?
Between the technical resilience, yes, but also the corporate transparency, the company's willingness to be open about how things work, and the legal and geopolitical environments they have to operate within.
So the tech can be great, but other factors can undermine trust.
Precisely. While technology provides these incredibly powerful tools for security and privacy, things like unavoidable legal obligations or just a basic lack of transparency can fundamentally contradict user privacy expectations. And that creates a really difficult choice for you, the consumer.
So bringing it right back home, what does all this mean for you, the listener, as you stand there, phone in hand, trying to decide which app to use for your most personal, maybe your most important conversations?
Well, I think it means that choosing a messaging app isn't just about, the cool features or which one has the best stickers or even just what all your friends happen to be using.
It needs more thought than that.
It really warrants carefully weighing several factors. You have to consider convenience, sure, ecosystem integration, how well does it work with your other devices, but also, critically, the technical transparency of the provider.
How open are they?
Exactly. How are the encryption keys actually managed? What are their real policies on metadata collection, not just the marketing spin? And yes, you probably do need to consider the geopolitical context of the service provider, depending on your personal threat model and the sensitivity of your communications.
So for someone with really high privacy needs,
For those with extremely high privacy or security requirements, maybe journalists, activists, or just very privacy-conscious individuals, opting for services that are open source, rigorously transparent, and actively minimize metadata collection like
things like keeping your device updated regularly, install those patches. Carefully managing app permissions. Do apps really need access to everything? And just generally understanding how your data is truly handled by the services you rely on every day. That's critical.
It really is. This whole discussion raises an important question for the future, I think. Given all the complexity we've explored today, the different protocols, the platform limitations, the trust issues,
Yeah.
how might the ongoing evolution of potentially universal cross-platform E2E standards,
Hmm.
like the work that GSMA is doing to integrate E2EE into the broader RCS standard for texting,
Hmm.
how might that fundamentally change the landscape of mobile messaging trust over, say, the next 5 years?
Hmm. Will universal standards simplify things and build trust, or just introduce a whole new set of complexities and lowest common denominator problems?
Exactly. Something to watch.
Definitely something to chew on. Well, that is all the time we have for this deep dive. Thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
We really hope you feel a little more informed, maybe a bit more empowered about the hidden world working behind the scenes of your mobile messages. We'll be back soon with another deep dive into a topic you didn't even know you needed to know.